After William and Daenerys Targaryen take their break out on the palace terrace, they return back past the staircase with the flag, which leads to another library, back into the Hall of Genealogical Records library. As William takes a seat, Daenerys then begins to let him know what happened to all the great bastards. As you will see in this scroll, and she hands him the next scroll, this is going to cover what became of all the great bastards born of King Aegon IV, and possibly a few others, from Elena Targaryen, as well as the one from Daena Targaryen. And it will lead into the eventual smaller war known as the Blackfyre Rebellion. So, are you ready to begin continuing your lessons, William? Yes, Daenerys. This should be interesting to find out if any of them actually did something with their life. Well, a lot of them supported the Blackfyre Rebellion because Daemon Blackfyre of the House of Targaryen believed that he should have the throne and not King Daeron II. Now, it's kind of a shame, I mean, not that it's something that I would say to offend anybody, but if one is born a bastard, they can always take redirection in their life and do something with it. Yes, that is interesting you should say this. Kind of thinks for a moment. But we'll talk about that later, so let us continue your lessons at this time. Alright, I'm ready to begin. So with that, William continues with the history of the Targaryen genealogy of the great bastards leading to the Blackfyre Rebellion. At this time, we now go into the great bastards, the history of the House of Targaryen. As everyone remembers, Daemon Blackfyre of the House Targaryen was knighted by former King Aegon IV rather than King Daeron II. But yet it was King Daeron II who ascended the throne, and upon hearing about this did not go well with Daemon the First Blackfyre of the House of Targaryen. So now we go into the history of the Targaryen genealogy of the great bastards. Daemon First Blackfyre. Daemon First Blackfyre, born Daemon Waters, was the bastard son of Princess Daena Targaryen and King Aegon IV Targaryen. Daemon founded House Blackfyre, named after the Targaryen Valyrian steel sword. He fought against his true-born half-brother, King Daeron II Targaryen, for the Iron Throne in the First Blackfyre Rebellion. Daemon was the first and greatest of the 5 Blackfyre pretenders. As a bastard of House Targaryen, Daemon bore the arms of House Targaryen with the colors reversed, a black 3-headed dragon on a red field. Thus he became known as the Black Dragon. In appearance and character, Daemon was tall and powerful, with broad shoulders, muscular arms, and a flat stomach. Targaryen on both sides, Daemon had all the hallmarks of his house. He had strong Targaryen features with deep purple eyes and silver gold hair, which he wore long, flowing down to his shoulders in a silvery gold mane. He always went clean-shaven, with neither beard nor mustache. Almost inhumanly beautiful, Daemon looked every inch the warrior, and many thought that he strongly resembled portraits of Aegon the Conqueror. His armor was ornate and costly, all black and red plate, and his war helm was distinctive, with bat-like steel dragon wings on the sides. Daemon matured into a man of considerable charm and strength, mastering all weapons of the battlefield. But with the sword Blackfire in hand, he was said to fight like the warrior himself. He won friends easily, and women were drawn to him. In history of his early life, in late 170 AC, Princess Daena Targaryen gave birth to Daemon in King's Landing. He was named for Daena's grandfather, Prince Daemon Targaryen, for the Prince Daemon who had been the wonder of the terror of his age, quote unquote. Although Daena refused to name Daemon's father, many people suspected the involvement of Prince Aegon Targaryen. Daemon was raised in the Red Keep and was taught arms by Sir Quentin Ball, the Master at Arms at the Red Keep. In 182 AC, when he was 12 years old, Daemon participated in a squire's tourney, which he won. King Aegon IV Targaryen personally knighted Daemon and publicly bestowed the Targaryen Valyrian steel sword Blackfire on him, finally acknowledging him as his son. There were some who felt that the sword symbolized the monarchy, as it had been the sword of King Aegon I Targaryen, the Conqueror, and had been passed on from king to king ever since. Aegon's public gift of the sword would eventually start the first talk that Daemon should be king. Following the acquisition of the sword, Daemon took the name Blackfire for himself. King Aegon IV negotiated a betrothal for Daemon to Rohan of Tyrosh. Daemon's supporters would later claim that Daemon had desired to marry his younger half-sister Daenerys instead, and that King Aegon, who desired the marriage alliance to Tyrosh, had promised Daemon that he could have more than one wife. In 184 AC, while Aegon IV was on his deathbed, he legitimized all of his bastards, including Daemon. Daemon's true-born half-brother, Daeron II Targaryen, ascended the throne following Aegon's death. He refused to allow Daemon more than one wife, paid the dowry his late father had promised to the Archon of Tyrosh, and saw Daemon wed to Rohan in early 184 AC, granting him a tract of land near the Blackwater on his wedding day with the right to raise a castle. Daemon and Rohan had a fertile marriage. Their twin sons, Aegon and Aemon, were born later that same year. They were followed by 5 more sons and at least 2 daughters. In 187 AC, Daemon participated in Princess Daenerys' wedding tourney. He was defeated in the final tilt by Prince Baelor Targaryen, Daemon II's eldest son. Meanwhile, the growing influence of the Dornish at court, the Dornish appearance of Daeron II's heir, the sudden change of Dornish enemies to Dornish allies, Daeron's rumored illegitimacy, started by King Aegon IV during his reign, and Aegon IV's previous public gift of Blackfire, the Sword of Kings, to Daemon caused several nobles and knights to start mistrusting Daeron II and Baelor, While seeing promise in Daemon, men began to approach Daemon, but it took them many years to convince Daemon to declare his claim. Maester Yandel considers it likely that it had been Aegon Rivers, Daemon's younger half-brother, who had managed to convince Daemon in the end. According to King Maker I Targaryen, it had been both Aegon Rivers and Sir Quentin Ball, the Master-at-Arms at the Red Keep, who had played the largest role in convincing Daemon. Aegon pressed him to proclaim his claim for the Iron Throne, and after Daemon agreed to a betrothal between his eldest daughter, Kayla, and Aegon, his efforts increased. Many lords and knights joined in. Besides the influences of his counselors, Daemon had come to resent having the status of bastard and what it represented. Following the Blackfyre defeat in the First Rebellion, which included the death of Daemon himself and his eldest two children, Aegon and Aemon, Daemon's bastard half-brother, Sir Aegon Rivers, fled to Tyrosh with Daemon's remaining children and widow. From there, Daemon's descendants continued to plot. 4 more rebellions would follow until 260 AC, when Meleys the First Blackfyre, the last male of House Blackfyre, was slain on the Stepstones during the War of the Ninepenny Kings. Viserys Plum. Lord Viserys Plum was the head of House Plum during the reign of King Aerys I Targaryen. However, until such time that there would be a King Aerys I Targaryen, during the time of King Daeron II Targaryen, he is the son of Aelena Targaryen and Ossifer Plum. However, the rumor had it, though it had never been proven, that Ossifer Plum, once seeing Aelena Targaryen completely naked, had died. Therefore, it was former King Aegon IV who had sexual relations with his cousin Aelena Targaryen to impregnate her so that she would have Viserys Plum, which means she would have allowed this, and Viserys would have got the last name Plum to conceal that fact. But again, as it had been noted, nobody dared to utter this, because if Aelena Targaryen wasn't happy, neither would be Aegon IV. So even the Septon of the Faith of the Seven knew better than to have a loose tongue and to utter such a suspicion. Daeron II Targaryen. Daeron II Targaryen, known as Daeron the Good, was the 12th Lord of the Seven Kingdoms from House Targaryen. Daeron brought Dorne peacefully into the realm, uniting all the lands of Westeros, south of the Wall. His bastard half-brother, Daemon Blackfyre, challenged his rule, and the result was a terrible civil war, the First Blackfyre Rebellion. Daeron died during the Great Spring Sickness in 209 AC. Character and appearance. Daeron was dignified. He was round-shouldered, with thin legs and a small pot-belly. His kind, thoughtful face had a certain coulette strength, and his eyes were clear and full of resolve. He wore the elaborate dragon crown of his father, King Aegon IV Targaryen. On his coinage, he was depicted as a clean-shaven. Daeron the Good was seen as wise, just, and kind-hearted. Not a warrior by any means. He was a cultured, scholarly man who kept company with maesters and other learned men. In history, or his early life, born on the last day of 153 AC, during the final years of the reign of his great-uncle King Aegon III, Daeron was the eldest son of Prince Aegon and Aegon's sister and wife, Daenerys. After the failed conquest of Dorne, during the short reign of Daeron the Young Dragon, King Baelor the Blessed ascended the Iron Throne and arranged the marriage of his cousin Prince Daeron to Princess Myraya Martell of Dorne as part of a dual marriage pact between the two kingdoms to make peace. In 170 AC, Daeron and Myraya had their first son, whom they named Baelor, in Baelor the Blessed's honor. 3 other sons would, of course, later follow. Prince of Dragonstone. When his father became king, King Aegon IV Targaryen, in 172 AC, Daeron became the heir to the Iron Throne and the Prince of Dragonstone. Daeron challenged much of Aegon IV's behavior. He became an obstacle to many of his father's schemes, most notably Aegon's plan to start an unprovoked war on Dorne. The king ignored Daeron's protests, built a massive fleet, and sent it to invade the Dornish coastline. In 174 AC, Daeron was relieved when the fleet was scattered and destroyed by a storm en route. At about the same time, Daeron's mother, Queen Daenerys, was suddenly accused of adultery and treason by Sir Morgul Hastwyck, trying to cast doubts on Daeron's parentage. The matter was settled when Prince Aemon, the Dragon Knight, defended his sister's honor and slew her accuser in a trial by combat. According to the writings of Maester Caith in Lives of 4 Kings, King Aegon had secretly started the rumors of Daenerys' adultery. The king denied rumors. He had used Morgul to instigate this tale so he would have reason to disinherit Daeron. Late in Aegon's reign, after the deaths of Aemon and Daenerys, Aegon began to make thinly veiled reference to Daeron's alleged illegitimacy, insinuating that Daeron was not his son, but the product of an illegitimate union between his wife Daenerys and their other brother, Aemon. It was also rumored that Aegon planned to disinherit Daeron in favor of a bastard son, Daemon. Aegon never formally disowned Daeron. Accounts differ as to why, probably because to do so would have meant civil war. Chief among Daeron's supporters was House Martell due to his marriage to Princess Myraya Martell of Sunspear. Daeron spent most of the last years of his father's reign on Dragonstone with his wife and children. On his deathbed, the spiteful Aegon legitimized all his bastards, with those born to noble mothers being called the Great Bastards. Daenerys Targaryen, daughter of Aegon IV. Princess Daenerys Targaryen was the daughter of Aegon IV Targaryen and Daenerys Targaryen, and the youngest sister of King Daeron II Targaryen. Daenerys Targaryen, daughter of Aerys II Targaryen, and Rhaella Targaryen, was named after her. As a side note, she also had a twin brother, but he died at childbirth. In history, Princess Daenerys was born in 172 AC, some 19 years after the birth of her brother, the future King Daeron II, who had been born in 153 AC, the year their parents had been wed. Daenerys had a twin brother who was stillborn. Her mother, Queen Daenerys, lingered near death due to the difficult birth, but eventually recovered. At the time of her birth, Daenerys' brother, Daeron, was already married and had a son of his own. Daenerys' betrothal to the Prince of Dorne, Prince Maron Martell, was brokered by her brother Daeron as part of the treaty bringing Dorne into the realm of the Iron Throne after negotiations lasting 2 years. It was said that Daenerys loved Daemon Blackfyre, and that the main reason Daemon rose in rebellion against Daeron was that Daenerys was denied to him. Yet it must be said that Daemon did not rebel until 8 years after the wedding, and that Princess Daenerys is not recorded to have ever mourned her half-brother. By the time Daemon rebelled, he had been married to Rohan Tyrosh for years and had at least 9 children with her, and Daenerys had already given Meryn multiple heirs. Daenerys' wedding to Prince Meryn was held in King's Landing in 187 AC. In the ceremony, Prince Meryn and King Daeron went to pay their respects to the statue of King Baelor I Targaryen, who had once brokered the peace between the Iron Throne and Dorne, with the marriage of King Daeron II and Princess Maria Martell, Meryn's sister. As a result, to celebrate the marriage, a tourney was held where Prince Baelor Targaryen won the name Breakspear, defeating, amongst others, Daemon Blackfyre in the lists in the final tilt. According to George R.R. Martin, and it's quoted, despite Daemon and Daenerys being in love, her brother, the king, Daeron the Good, was more concerned with matters of state than matters of love. There had been many years of fighting with Dorne, and failure to bring them into the Seven Kingdoms, while not being able to keep them from harassing the Seven Kingdoms. So he realized that where violence failed, perhaps marriage could bring an end to hostilities, and so he uses his sister to make an alliance with the Prince of Dorne. It's a political marriage, pure and simple, a convenient marriage to guarantee a union between Dorne and the Seven Kingdoms, and also he prefers to, unquote. He prefers to give his sister to the Prince of Dorne over a bastard brother with whom he'd already had a few clashes, and whom too many people were looking one as a legitimate claimant to the throne or rightful king. That was the straw that broke the camel's back and helps lead to Daemon becoming the first Blackfyre pretender, unquote. Prince Meryn Martell built his new bride the Water Gardens, a place of beauty made of color marble with pools and trees to free her from the heat and dust of Sunspear. Their children played in the pools along with the children of other High Lords and ladies. One day, when the sun was hot, she took pity on the children of the servants and guards and allowed them to play in the pools with the highborn children, starting a tradition that is still kept in Dorne to this day. A portrait of Princess Daenerys hangs in Sunspear. Quotes by Daenerys. This is your realm. Remember them in everything you do. Daenerys to her son and heir, speaking of the innocent children of the water gardens, from the highborn to the low. Quotes about Daenerys. The home realm knew that the girl loved Daemon's bastard brother, Daemon Blackfyre, and was loved by him in turn. But the king was wise enough to see that the good of thousands must come before the desire of two, even if these two were dear to him. Prince Doran Martell to Sir Balon Swan. Daemon Blackfyre loved the first Daenerys and rose in rebellion and denied her. Sir Barristan Selmy's thoughts. 100 years ago, Daenerys Targaryen came to Dorne to make a peace. Now another comes to make a war. Arion Martell. Whether Daenerys loved Daemon, as those who rose for the Black Dragon later claimed, who could say? In the years afterward, Daenerys was never aught but a loyal wife to Prince Meryn, and if she mourned Daemon Blackfyre, she left no record of it. Master Yandel. Sir Aegon Rivers, frequently called Bittersteel, was one of the great bastards and a son of King Aegon IV Targaryen by his fifth mistress, Lady Barbara Bracken. Aegon was the founder of a famed group of exiled sellswords, the Golden Company. In his personal arms, he combined the red stallion of House Bracken with black dragon wings from House Blackfyre on a golden field. Appearance and character. Being half Targaryen, Aegon had purple eyes but black hair. As an adult, he had a close-cropped beard. He looked like a warrior, being lean, light, and tall. Aegon's armor was well made, though plain-looking, being gray steel and black rings. On his helm was a horse head with a horse's mane flowing behind. His shield displayed his personal seagull, a stallion with black dragon wings on a golden field, snorting fire. Aegon was angry all of his life, and quickly irritated and offended. He did not smile, and especially loathed his younger half-brother, Brynden Rivers, and Brynden's mother, Melissa Blackwood, who had replaced Aegon's mother, Barbara Bracken, as King Aegon IV Targaryen's mistress. In history for his early life, Aegon was born at King's Landing to one of King Aegon IV Targaryen's mistresses, Barbara Bracken. When Queen Daenerys Targaryen recovered her health, Prince Daeron and Aemon, the Dragon Knight, forced Aegon to send Barbara and child from the capital, and Aegon was instead raised at Stonehenge in the Riverlands. The angry Aegon reserved particular loathing for his half-brother, Brynden Rivers, whose mother, Melissa Blackwood, had replaced his own as their father's favorite mistress. Aegon loathed Brynden, who was known as Bloodraven, even further when Shiera Seastar, their beautiful half-sister and a fellow great bastard, chose Brynden over him. Their other half-brother, Daemon Blackfyre agreed to wed his daughter, Kayla, to Aegar. Aegar often urged Daemon to press his own claim to the Iron Throne. Maya Rivers. Maya Rivers was the eldest of the three bastard children of King Aegon IV Targaryen and his sixth mistress, Lady Melissa Blackwood. In history, Melissa Blackwood reigned for 5 years as the mistress of King Aegon IV Targaryen, during which she gave birth to 3 children, Maya, Gwyneth, and Brynden. Aegon's bastards born of noble women were legitimized as great bastards on the king's deathbed. Gwyneth Rivers. Gwyneth Rivers was the second of the 3 bastard children of King Aegon IV Targaryen and his sixth mistress, Lady Melissa Blackwood. In history, Melissa Blackwood reigned for 5 years as the mistress of King Aegon IV Targaryen, to which she gave birth to 3 children, Maya, Gwyneth, and Brynden. Aegon's bastards, born of noble women, were legitimized as great bastards of the king's deathbed. Brynden Rivers. Sir Brynden Rivers, called Lord Bloodhaven, was a legitimized great bastard of Aegon IV Targaryen and Melissa Blackwood, the king's sixth mistress. Brendan's personal arms were a white dragon with red eyes breathing red flame on a black field. Brynden was a Targaryen loyalist during the Blackfyre rebellions, the Hand of Aerys the First, and Maker First Targaryen, and a Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Shiera Seastar, another bastard of Aegon IV, was his mistress. His half-brother Aegar Bittersteel Rivers desired Shiera also, which served in increasing the enmity between the two. Bloodraven was thought to be a sorcerer. Character and appearance. An albino, Brynden had milk white skin, long white hair, and red eyes. On the right side of his face, he had a red wine stain birthmark that extended from his throat up to his right cheek, from which he earned his name Bloodraven, as the birthmark was said to look somewhat like a raven drawn in blood. However, Sir Duncan the Tall thought the birthmark just a splotch. According to George R.R. Martin, it is more a suggestion of a raven's shape, like an ink blot. Brynden was not as tall or muscular as his half-brothers. He was a shade under 6 feet tall and very thin, gaunt, with a grim, forbidding aspect and a sinister reputation as a sorcerer and spymaster. He typically wore the colors of blood and smoke, with smoke being a dark gray that was mottled and streaked with black. Because his skin was sensitive to light, he usually went about cloaked and hooded. He was an expert bowman. Brynden lost an eye during the first Blackfyre Rebellion and rarely covered the empty socket with a patch, preferring to display his scar and empty socket to the world. He wore his white hair straight and to his shoulders, with the front brushed forward to cover his missing eye. As Lord Bloodraven, Brynden was rumored to be a sinister sorcerer who effectively ruled the kingdom with spies and spells. A popular riddle asked was, how many eyes does Lord Bloodraven have? 1,000 eyes and 1. The song A Thousand Eyes and One was written about Brynden. In history, for his youth, Brynden was born in King's Landing as the bastard son of King Aegon IV Targaryen and his sixth mistress, Lady Melissa Blackwood, who had replaced the king's fifth mistress, Barbara Bracken. Brynden's sisters were Maya and Gwyneth Rivers. Although Melissa was eventually dismissed by Aegon IV in favor of his seventh mistress, Bethany Bracken, Brynden was able to maintain close relations at court because of Melissa's popularity. Brynden was resented by Barbara's bastard son, Aegar Rivers, nicknamed Bittersteel. Both of these great bastards were legitimized by their father when the king was on his deathbed. Jane Loston. Jane Loston was a member of House Loston and was the daughter of Lord Lucas Loston and Lady Felina Stokeworth. She was King Aegon IV Targaryen's eighth mistress and rumored to have been possibly fathered by the king himself. In history, Janie was brought to court by her mother, Felina Stokeworth, in 178 AC, when she was 14. King Aegon IV Targaryen made Lord Lucas Loston his new hand, and it was said, but never proved, that he enjoyed mother and daughter together in the same bed. Aegon soon gave Jane a pox he had caught from the whores he had seen after Lady Bethany Bracken's execution, and the Lostons were then all sent from court. This also would be the last time, since there is no record that Jane Loston ever had children, that she would ever be brought up in Targaryen history again. Lord Lucas Loston, husband of Felina. Lucas Loston was a member of House Loston. He was Master-at-Arms at the Red Keep during the reign of King Aegon III Targaryen. In history of 151 AC, after Prince Aegon was caught in bed with Lady Felina Stokeworth, his father, Prince Viserys, married Felina to his Master-at-Arms, Lucas Loston, and convinced King Aegon III Targaryen to name Loston Lord of Harrenhal to remove them from court. In 178 AC, Felina brought her 14-year-old daughter, Jane Loston, to the court of King Aegon IV Targaryen. The king took Jane, who may have been his own daughter, as his eighth mistress, and named Lucas Loston hand of the king. It was rumored, but not proven, that King Aegon enjoyed mother and daughter together in the same bed. However, Aegon soon gave Jane a pox, and Lucas was banished from court along with his wife and daughter, having served less than a year as hand. It is unclear whether this Lucas Loston is the same Lucas Loston called the Pander, but since pander means one who facilitates prostitution, and Lucas was rewarded for letting King Aegon the Unworthy have his wife and daughter, it is very possible that they were the same man. Bellenora Otherys. Bellenora Otherys was the eldest of the three bastard children of King Aegon IV Targaryen and his fourth mistress, Belligeir Otherys. In history, after Princess Daenerys Targaryen had almost died giving birth in 161 AC, her husband Prince Aegon was sent to Braavos as an envoy, so Daenerys would have sufficient time to recover. In Braavos, Aegon met Belligeir Otherys, with whom he started an affair. Aegon and Belligeir had an affair for 10 years, during which Belligeir gave birth to 3 children, Bellenora, Narha, and Balerion. Their paternity remains doubtful, as Belladura is said to have had a husband in a report she visited. Melanora became a courtesan and took the name of Black Pearl of Braavos, acclaimed by singers of her day as the most beautiful woman in all the world. The courtesan tradition was continued by her daughter. Narha Otherys. Narha Otherys was the second of the three bastard children of King Aegon IV Targaryen and his fourth mistress, Belliger Otherys. After Princess Daenerys Targaryen had almost died, giving birth in 161 AC, her husband Prince Aegon was sent to Braavos as an envoy, so Daenerys would have sufficient time to recover. In Braavos, Aegon met Belliger Otherys, with whom he started an affair. Aegon and Belliger had an affair for 10 years, during which Belliger gave birth to 3 children, Melanora, Narha, and Balerion. Their paternity remains doubtful, as Belliger is said to have had a husband in every port she visited. Balerion Otherys. Balerion was the youngest of the 3 bastard children of King Aegon IV Targaryen and his fourth mistress, Belliger Otherys. Once again, in history, after Princess Daenerys Targaryen had almost died, giving birth in 161 AC, her husband, Prince Aegon, was sent to Braavos as an envoy, so Daenerys would have sufficient time to recover. In Braavos, Aegon met Belliger Otherys, with whom he started an affair. Aegon and Belliger had an affair for 10 years, during which Belliger gave birth to 3 children, Melanora, Narha, and Balerion. Their paternity remains doubtful, as Belliger is said to have had a husband in every port she lived. Alysanne, daughter of Aegon IV. Alysanne was the eldest child of Prince Aegon Targaryen and his mistress Miget, sometimes known as Mary Meg. Prince Aegon Targaryen would also be known as Aegon IV. In history, Alysanne's mother, Miget, was the mistress of Prince Aegon for 4 years. Alysanne was the first of 4 daughters. After Prince Viserys discovered this, Miget was returned to her husband in the Riverlands, while Alysanne and her 3 sisters were given to the faith to be trained as a septa. Lily. Lily was the second of the 4 bastard children of King Aegon IV Targaryen and his second mistress, Miget, also known as Mary Meg. In history, Lily's mother, Miget, was the mistress of Prince Aegon for 4 years. Lily was the second of 4 daughters. After Prince Viserys discovered this, Miget was returned to her husband in the Riverlands, while Lily and her 3 sisters were given to the faith to be trained as a septa. Willow, daughter of Aegon IV. Willow was the third of the 4 bastard children of King Aegon IV Targaryen and his second mistress, Miget, known as Mary Meg. In history, Willow's mother, Miget, was the mistress of Prince Aegon for 4 years. Willow was the third of 4 daughters. After Prince Viserys discovered this, Miget was returned to her husband in the Riverlands, while Willow and her 3 sisters were given to the faith to be trained as a septa. Rosie, daughter of Aegon IV. Rosie was the youngest of the 4 bastard children of Aegon IV Targaryen and his second mistress, Miget, known as Mary Meg. In history, Rosie's mother, Miget, was the mistress of Prince Aegon for 4 years. Rosie was the youngest of 4 daughters. After Prince Viserys discovered this, Megette was returned to her husband in the Riverlands, while Rosie and her three sisters were given to the Faith to be trained as a septa. Unfortunately, this then concluded the life of Megette, because upon return to the blacksmith, of whom she was originally married to, until Aegon IV had bought her for several gold pieces and with the assistance of a knight giving threats, she was beaten to death by her husband, a blacksmith. Now there is at least 3 other bastards that is not mentioned. Again, we can confirm that the 3 bastards existed because of the simple fact that it is mentioned in Targaryen history that while a guest, either in the castle of Butterwell's castle, or even if Lord Butterwell was a guest in the Red Keep of former King Aegon IV Targaryen, that King Aegon had used a glimmering dragon egg as a type of payment to have access to Lord Butterwell's 3 maiden daughters. However, having access and actually mating with them is 2 different things. And of course, only in theory, Lord Butterwell would have not been happy upon the discovery that they became pregnant. In any case, since this was already covered, the first maiden daughter was slender, very beautiful, and long, straight black hair. She seemed to be quite well trained in using a sword, having learned much of the skills when Lord Butterwell probably discovered her twirling the sword about while in her dress. So, in which case, again, this is all conjecture and can't be proven, but only based on descriptive rumors, she probably would have wore chainmail and would have been quite handy with the sword. As per agreement, upon giving birth to the bastard, who is never mentioned by name, and for her own protection, her name is kept from the records as well, the bastard son is then delivered to a wet nurse to take care of, and from there off to an orphanage in King's Landing. The second maiden daughter of Lord Butterwell had bright, fiery red hair, very slender, very beautiful, and sometimes wore a braid around her head like that of a crown. And again, she, at the same time, her oldest sister and youngest sister were visited by King Aegon IV. King Aegon decided to have a foursome, that is, to have sexual relations with all 3 of them at the same time. As per agreement by Lord Butterwell, upon giving birth to the bastard son, whose name is never mentioned, and for her own protection, her name is kept from the records as well, the son would have been turned over to a wet nurse who would have taken care of him, and later then delivered to an orphanage in King's Landing. Her skill, however, though again conjecture and not proven, was that of the bow and arrow. Not like a crossbow like most warriors or knights would use, but a long, straight bow. And she was quite the marksman. In fact, she was probably even be well known as a good hunter, and very stealthy in movement. She had the strength of agility and speed. Other than that, nothing else is ever heard or said of her again. And finally, the youngest of the 3 maiden daughters of Lord Butterwell was slender, had somewhat bright blonde hair, and occasionally wore a couple of braids on either side of her face. She wore a type of crown-like jewelry about the crown of her head, and was quite well versed in throwing daggers. She learned to be like that of a whisperer, someone who, if requested, listened in on conversations, not so much like that of a spy, but to keep track of things that may be considered suspicious. And just because she threw daggers did not make her a thief, because Lord Butterwell had brought his daughters up better than that. Again, King Aegon IV, having access to the 3 maiden daughters of Lord Butterwell, had decided to have a foursome, that is, sexual relations with all 3 of them at the same time. And at first, she did agree to the pre-arrangement of giving up the born bastard son, whose name is never mentioned, and again, for her own protection, her name is kept from the records as well. But then something changed, because upon discovery, it would seem that she would have been the one who hung on to this one, and so thus the father reluctantly agreed to this. The other 2 sisters wouldn't have treated her indifferently for having done so, because they had family values, and so therefore, whether she kept the bastard son or not, they would have treated her nevertheless like a sister. So in which case, nothing is ever said as to what became of the 2 bastards that were turned over to the orphanage through wet nurses, and the one kept in custody by the youngest maiden daughter. Though it would be in theory, it could be said that upon growing up, for the 2 at the orphanage and the one raised by the youngest daughter, that by the time of the 2nd or 3rd rebellion, they would have chosen to gain experience for knighthood, starting out as squires, to join the 3rd rebellion of the Blackfire, and as in any case of war, Polly would most likely, being a casualty of war, been killed by the 4th rebellion. In either case, nothing is ever heard of her, or the one that she kept upon changing her mind to raise as her own. Now that Daenerys II Targaryen has been installed upon the throne of swords for 12 kingdoms, this is where confrontation will start for the Blackfire Rebellion reign. Upon learning of his father Aegon IV's death, Daeron departed Dragonstone for King's Landing. He chose to crown himself with his father's crown to quell the doubts and rumors about his parentage. Mindful of his duty to the realm, Daeron acted swiftly to put to right many of the wrongs of his father's reign. He replaced a small council with his own men, typically selecting wise and capable counselors. It took a year to repair the city watch of King's Landing, whose officers were just as corrupt as Aegon had been. Daeron could not undo the legitimization of his father's bastards. He treated them honorably and continued the incomes bestowed on them. He paid the dowry Aegon had promised the Archon of Tyrosh for his daughter Rohan of Tyrosh to wed Daemon Blackfyre when Daemon was 13. On Daemon's wedding day, Daeron granted him a tract of land near the Blackwater Rush so Daemon could build a keep. Because of Daeron's marriage to Mariah Martell, many noble Dornishmen and women flocked to Daeron's court, which served to give life in the Red Keep a foreign flavor. This also alienated many of Daeron's other nobles and courtiers. Daeron and Mariah's marriage was happy and fruitful. Daeron began negotiations with his good brother Meryn Martell, Prince of Dorne, to unite Dorne with the Seven Kingdoms. After 2 years of negotiations, an agreement was finalized. Meryn was wed to Daeron's sister, Princess Daenerys, in 188 AC, and a year later, the Prince of Dorne swore an oath of fealty before the Iron Throne. At the Great Sept of Baelor, they placed a golden wreath before the statue of King Baelor to bless it and stated, "Baelor, your work is done." To celebrate the peaceful joining of Dorne to the realm, Daeron founded Summerhome, a new palace in the Dornish marshes, lightly fortified to represent the new peace. However, other great houses represented special privileges and rights which were allowed to House Martell. Meryn was allowed to keep the royal title Prince and could collect taxes for the Iron Throne with less oversight from King's Landing. The king became known as Daeron the Good by small folk and lords alike. While he was more a scholar than warrior, 2 of his sons were skilled at arms. The eldest became known as Baelor Breakspear, the incident at the tourney to celebrate the wedding of Daenerys with Meryn of Dorne, in which Baelor unhorsed Daemon Blackfyre in the final tilt. Darion's youngest son, Maker, also proved a formidable fighter. Now, as an additional side note, though it cannot be proven, again, in theory, Lord Butterwell would have had his reasons for having grieves against former King Aegon IV Targaryen, but would not hold it against King Daeron II, since the old saying goes, no one can help who their parents are. But since all treasures can't be found because they were squandered by former King Aegon IV, one can only theorize that perhaps the glimmering egg, which technically and rightfully belongs in the hands and custody of House Targaryen, was most likely returned back to the rightful owner or house of Targaryen, to which King Daeron II would probably most likely have accepted this, and nothing was put in the records of its being returned, so that nobody would ever have thought that perhaps, even though it was mentioned it was given to him, that it would hopefully be another incident forgotten. Yeah, and Lord Butterwell is the single father of the House Butterwell with 3 maiden daughters. They also, of course, made their appearance. The first daughter, looking very well in her splendid dark blue dress and dark hair. He also introduced his second daughter, though because King's Landing is a little more open to the sunshine, her great fiery red hair would have kind of looked more like a dark golden blonde. And she was dressed well in a golden red dress with a special headpiece and veil. And finally, the youngest daughter, her hair especially done. She would have been in a very light, sheer sheen type dress with jewels that mostly covered the areas that would be considered inappropriate if standing before a king. So, in the end, whether King Daeron II, the youngest, kept the third bastard born of Aegon IV or not, probably wouldn't have been held against her, and he most likely would have accepted their presence and gave Lord Butterwell a good blessing for him talking to Daeron at the time of the Blackfire Rebellion. Once back home, as we all know siblings, back to business as usual. The eldest daughter, of course, being her funny self, flinging a sword around, probably didn't have anything to do, and most likely would have been bored. While her hair returns to being back to bright red, is one known for hunting, and of course the third taking care of the one she kept in custody and learning much she can to be the heir to the house Butterwell seat, pretty much hung out with her father to learn as much as she can about how the house Butterwell runs things. So that's pretty much the end of everything you will hear now about the three maiden daughters of Lord Butterwell. There's nothing, again, nothing is ever said of them again. Mariah, excuse me, Mariah Martell. Princess Mariah Nymeros Martell was the wife of King Daeron II. In history, Mariah was the eldest daughter of the Prince of Dorne during the reign of King Daeron I Targaryen. She had a younger brother, Prince Meryn Martell. After King Daeron I had been killed in Dorne 161 AC, King Daenerys I Targaryen freed the Dornish hostages in King's Landing and returned them to Dorne personally, walking barefoot. Once he reached Sunsbury, he spoke with the Prince of Dorne and agreed upon a peace, which included the betrothal of Mariah to Baelor's cousin, Prince Daeron Targaryen. The two would marry once they were both of age. Mariah married Daeron years later and would have 4 children by him: Baelor, Aerys, Rhaegal, and Maker. As you can see, her family line for genealogy is as big as Daemon Blackfire's, if not even larger. So they would of course all be married. And then the line even gets bigger from the children that are born of this lineage as well. The first, of course, to be noted would be that of Baelor, son of Daeron II and Mariah Martell. Baelor Targaryen, son of Daeron II. Prince Baelor Targaryen, known as Baelor Breakspear, was a prince of House Targaryen and was the eldest son and heir of King Daeron II Targaryen and Mariah Martell. Named after King Baelor I, Prince Baelor served as his father's Hand of the King from 196 AC until his death in 209 AC. Character and appearance. Prince Baelor had the dark hair of his mother, a Dornish princess. He kept it cut short and kept his jaw clean shaven. His nose had been broken twice. Baelor was a warrior and seemed to be all that could be wished in a knight, lord, or heir. He was also a man who could win respect with ease and was as open-handed and just as his father. However, too many men looked upon Baelor's dark hair and eyes and muttered that he was more Martell than Targaryen. Some Blackfire sympathizers also were bothered by his namesake, the feeblest king who ever sat on the Iron Throne, quote unquote. In history for his early life, Prince Baelor was born in 170 BC, the first child of King Daeron II Targaryen and Mariah Martell. He won the name Breakspear in 187 AC at the age of 17, following his famous victory at Princess Daenerys' wedding tourney, where he defeated Daemon Blackfire in the final tilt. As before, and again, only in theory, because this would have been considered something top secret and very royal sensitive politics. One can only theorize a special meeting called for a special consensus of the 900 women that former King Aegon IV has said he had loved. And it wouldn't be until he sent them on the secret mission that they would learn it was over 900. These especially select knights would be known as Knights of the King's Guard. Daemon would have summoned them, and two in particular would be representing the knights that they would select, that they would be most trusted, and not discuss the secret mission at hand, and discusses with them what the intent of their being summoned is about. However, since it's not his intent to just slay the women, he would most likely give them instructions that whatever they decide to silence the women, and whatever tactics they choose, he would approve upon their return with report. But that it is to find out if any are pregnant, and if not, how many total of the paramours, be they of high-born or low-born, or of simple whores, throughout the land. And even as far as the coastline of Essex, that his father Aegon IV had sexual indulgence and relations with. The two knights, of course, would understand that this is not to be discussed, other than those they have to inform what the mission's about with anyone else. and that this would be something of a matter to be quietly and discreetly handled in the most delicate matters, so that upon completion of the mission, it is never to be discussed again. The two knights, of course, would understand this, and so thus they would go off onto their mission and report back later once the consensus has been completed. The next thing, because again, business needs to be attended to, is the situation regarding the remaining bastard-born children of his father, Aegon IV. Most likely, he would have summoned Alysanne Targaryen, daughter of Miguel, Lily Targaryen, daughter of Miguel, Willow Targaryen, daughter of Miguel, Rosie Targaryen, daughter of Miguel, Janie Lofton, who is daughter of Felina Stokeworth, and also his father, former King Aegon IV's fifth mistress, since it has been rumored, though not proven, that King Aegon IV, former king, was probably most likely the father to Janie Lawson, and at the same time he enjoyed sexual relations with both mother and daughter. Maya Rivers, daughter of Melissa Blackwood. Gwenys Rivers Targaryen, who is the daughter of Melissa Blackwood. Dawenerys Offanes, daughter of Eligera. Narha Offanes, daughter of Eligera. And Shiera Seastar, daughter of Serene of Lys, who all, of course, had the same father, former King Aegon IV. Upon being assembled in the throne room, it would be considered the fact that Daenerys II Targaryen would have announced that, though it would be not held against them for their having been born with his father, that opportunities for them to serve a better cause would be presented to them. The faith of the Seven could train them to be subjects, and therefore they would no longer be considered to be bastard children. Since they really have no other choice in the matter, they would be given some time to think about it, but they would have to have a response soon. The first four decided to accept the honor because they would not want to be labeled such as being bastards. Therefore, Alysanne Targaryen, Lily Targaryen, Willow Targaryen, and Rosie Targaryen would probably most have likely been escorted out of the throne by a member of the Faithful Seven to get changed and give up their worldly appearance to serve as septons with training. Janie Lawson, of course, would have been pardoned by Daenerys II Targaryen because of the fact that whether she will believe as such or not would not be held against her. Janie, on the other hand, being that of a noble woman, refuses any such participation in the faith of the Seven, and most likely because of her being infected, probably wouldn't do too well to infect others in the Seven if it's catchy, but it's the same as undergoing treatment by a maester, and at the same time would assist her mother in other duties, thus keeping to herself. So this being accepted, she is dismissed and nothing is ever said of her again, whether she had married and had children or not. If upon being cured she got married, it would have probably been something like what Daenerys Stormborn of the House of Targaryen's human husband, William Targaryen, was called a commoner, meaning one of not any nobility or royalty, but it is never entered in Targaryen history. Then the same is now presented to Maya Rivers and Gwyneth's Rivers. They do not feel they should have to go into the kid's son either, seeing how this could be considered a possible confrontation between Baron II and them, because they should not have to be forced into such lifestyle. Bellinger being a nice, kind-hearted Black Pearl the Essos, most likely would have offered to take them under her wing. And thus, it is agreed upon by Darren II that she would find some occupational experience for them. While it cannot be proven, they are never heard of again. Most likely they, once they are in Essos, go on their own personal quest to find out about this mysterious one, who may or may not have been the daughter of former King Aegon IV, who started a new religious faction for anyone who is true Valyrian or Targaryen, known as the Gods of Fire and Ice. In either case, they just somehow mysteriously disappear, and possibly went on a quest to seek religious matters elsewhere. At the same time, though, however, before that happens, then there's the matter of Dawenerys and Nara authorities. One thing's for certain, Bellinger, being known as the Black Pearl, definitely stands to the defense of her own daughters, because this would be considered a great insult. Her daughters will not be turned into Septas or into the Faithless Seven, and they will work closely with her as well. So, thus, to prevent any insult or be the cause of a instigation between Westeros and Essos, most likely, though not proven, Darren II Targaryen would have allowed this. And so, therefore, with Dawenerys, Narha, the two daughters of Bellinger, and Myra and Gwyneth, all four depart from Essos. Now, as we all know, Felina Stokeworth, who was present at the time when Jaime lost, had been confronted by Darren II regarding sharing sexual relations with her father, and if he actually be the father to her, because it's an uncertain would have most likely went back to the residence, because they do have a home to go to, of Lord Lucas Lawson. Nothing has ever heard of Lord Lucas Lawson as whether he instigated the other types of whorehouses. If one of the whorehouses were once, eventually, throughout generations, passed on to the one who would be known as Littlefinger. However, they all three depart for their own home residence. This then, of course, leaves Shira Seastar. Shira Seastar, in some cases, would probably be considered high-strung, very determined, and with an attitude that no one's going to dictate to her whether she goes to a faithful seven in the septa or where she should go. This, of course, does not lead to a very good discussion between her and King Daeron II, and so therefore she decides to wait to see what her half-brother Daemon and Aegon have to say about the matter, and one called Valyrian authorities, along with Brendan Rivers. So the other Knights of the King Guard then escort them in. While this is presented, we can only guess, because again, no such discussions have ever been documented, that Blackfyre, that is Daemon, is presented with the opportunity that rather than squabble over the Iron Throne, being born a bastard, that perhaps taking up something known as the Black Watch would suit him. Of course, Daemon would find this to be an insult because he's already married. He's not about to give up his wife. Aegar, as he thinks, is obviously not going to go to the Black Watch because he's in love with Sierra Seastar, as is Brendan Rivers. Well, in that case then, he pretty much makes the decree that both Daemon and Aegar are to depart King's Landing because they are forthwith vanished and never been to be seen again. So they leave, and Sierra Seastar then most likely tells Daeron II that he offers her nothing and departs with them. Valyrian returns to see what the situation of her son, Valyrian Offerings, is. He, of course, will not go to the Black Watch because, like that of her daughters, it would be considered an insult. So Daeron allows him to live with his mother. Brendan, on the other hand, as he has no qualms of supporting Blackfyre, decides to give aid to Daeron II, and therefore is about to serve the king, because he does not seem to show any types of treachery. And so with that, the meeting is adjourned, and the selected knights of the King's Guard would have escorted all those that were summoned out of the throne room if they haven't left already. Along the way, both Daeron II and Maria Martell, as time goes by, would have had their second son, known as Aerys I, second son of Daeron II and Maria Martell. Aerys I Targaryen. Aerys I Targaryen was a lord of the Seven Kingdoms and the 13th Targaryen to sit on the Iron Throne. He succeeded his father, Daeron II Targaryen. Appearance and character. According to semi-canon sources, Aerys was bookish. He was spindly and stooped, with long, straight hair. He had a long, thin face, a long, thin mustache, and a long, pointed beard. He wore the crown of Aegon IV Targaryen on his coinage. He was depicted with a beard. Aerys was a bookish man who preferred reading to ruling, and it was said in the Seven Kingdoms that Aerys would sooner bring a book to his bed rather than his wife. In history, for his youth, Aerys Targaryen was the second son of Daeron II Targaryen and Maria Martell. He was very much interested in books about ancient prophecy and higher mysteries. He was married to his cousin, Lady Aelinor Penrose, but he never showed any interest in getting her with child, instead shunning her bed. Rumor had it that Aerys had not even consummated the marriage. Aerys' nephew, Aegon, once recalled that as a boy he heard Aerys read about the return of dragons in a prophecy. Aelena Targaryen, daughter of former King Aegon III and Daniela, the mother. Aelena married her second husband, Ronald Penrose, in the reign of King Daeron II Targaryen. He sat on the king's small council as Master of Coin, but it was widely known that Aelena was the one performing the duties, as she was shrewd and intelligent with money, while Ronald did not have a great facility for numbers. King Daeron trusted her with many important matters of state, and she grew influential. Aelena birthed Ronald 4 children: Robin, Lena, Jocelyn, and Joy Penrose. After the birth of her 7th child, Aelena had declared that if 7 was sufficient for the gods, it would do for her as well. Not long after Ronald's death, Aelena married once more for love and by her own choosing, of one that she had not seen in a long time. This, of course, would be revealed at a later point in time of the Targaryen genealogical history. Ronald Penrose. Ronald Penrose was a member of House Penrose during the reign of King Daeron II Targaryen. He later married Princess Aelena Targaryen. They had 4 children together. In history, though Ronald Penrose sat on the king's small council as Master of Coin, it was widely known that his wife Aelena was the one performing the duties of the office. As a side note, one should pay particular attention to the painting shown, because while it may not look the same, it actually is the sword made of Valyrian steel that would later pass through hands, much like Blackfyre and Dark Sister, and thus be remade, maybe the handle even reshaped, and eventually end up at the Black Watch in the hands of a Lord Commander, before it is then also passed to one known as Jon Snow for having saved his life from a deceased member of the Castle Black who woke up as a White Walker, because it does distinctively have the wolf's head. Daenerys then and William sit, and she kind of then looks at him as he thinks for a moment. So, what do you think of the history thus far? Well, Daenerys, seems like many of the great bastards grew up, and while some took to being septas, it seems like nobody wanted to go to the Black Watch. Who knows where these other 2 went once they got to Essos? Maybe they're looking for that mysterious, I guess she would be a priestess now, Hera, who started the religious faction Gods of Fire and Ice. And then, of course, Sierra Seastar, I could see where she might be a little bit troublesome, as she's already taken sides with Daemon Blackfyre. Yet, she will have to make a decision whose side she's on if Brynden is supposed to have feelings for her, because if he's going to support the House of Targaryen, how can she be with him and yet she supports the House of Blackfyre? That is a good question. Well, you'll find out about this later, William, as the very first rebellion will be coming up next. For right now, let us go ahead and take a break, and then when we return, you'll learn of the first Blackfire Rebellion. So with that, then, they get up from the Genealogical Hall of Records library, past the staircase that leads to the second library, and up to the palace terrace for a short break.